In a recent article titled Science Proves Kids Are Bad for Earth, Morality Suggests We Stop Having Them, with a subtitle of We Need to Stop Pretending Kids Don't Have Environmental and Ethical Consequences. By the way, this article was published on NBCNews.com. A certain Travis Ryder, Dr. Travis Ryder, goes off basically offering the solution to climate change, to ecological issues, is by limiting children. The fewer the better. In fact, according to the mentality of Mr. Ryder, we should have no children. None. In fact, it would be much better for all of us to be sterile than to have any children. Because children are bad. They're intrinsically evil. Right? They no matter how innocent looking they are, no matter how cute they are, they gobble up oxygen, and when they fart, they release CO2, and oh god, we can't have that. No, no, no. We have to be sterile. If not, we have to kill them in the womb, or better yet, wear a condom. And if the condom doesn't work, don't worry, because we have abortion to solve that problem, right, Dr. Ryder? Doctor. All right, but let's be serious here. This article is a perfect piece of evidence, which just shows how the modern day academia is completely disconnected from reality. Do you know why? Why, or how should I say? Like, for example, right? People like sex. They not only like sex, they love kids, right? They love kids. People want kids. Young women love children. They naturally love children. They have that maternal instinct. Young men naturally love kids as well. They love having something to carry, a legacy that will carry on after they die. For a man, it has to do with pride. With a woman, it has to do with heart. But at the same time, men and women naturally love children, right? Healthy men and healthy women love children, right? That's biology, right? That's what we're hardwired to do: reproduce. Yet, here you have modern day academics saying, completely going against science, mind you, because science tells us we are made for reproduction, we're made to have children, we're social creatures, we are made to have families, we're not made to be isolated, we're meant to be out there, breeding, building, farming, we're meant to be, working with our hands. And yet here you have these scientists who claim to love science. In fact, the title of the article says, Science Proves. Now, to the ignorant person, to the person who sadly puts trust in modern day academics, he feels compelled to believe this article because of the claim that science proves kids are bad for the earth. Now, if you actually read the article, that there is no single shred of scientific evidence. In fact, a simple Google research, just a simple 5-minute research on any search engine, Bing, Yahoo, Google, doesn't matter, shows that this is the exact opposite. In fact, in less than 20 minutes, I kid you not, I found more articles debunking this ridiculous notion than I could that prove it. For example, right, Dr. Ryder makes this claim that kids are bad. Kids are intrinsically bad. Because kids add to the carbon footprint of the population. And because of this, we should limit the amount of children and or have no children. That's his premise. That's his whole entire outlook, his philosophy. It's a bit, how should I say, satanic. It's a very anti-life, very selfish also in the sense that his solution is not sacrificial on the individual level. Right? His solution demands the sacrifice of human life. It does not demand the sacrifice of the individual's lifestyle. Right? Because, for example, Google research revealed to me these absolutely staggering facts from scientists. People who, from his colleagues. And in these, let me just show you what I found. All right. Americans make 5% of the world population, but consume 24% of the world's energy, basically fossil fuels, right? If everyone lived like an American, we would need 5 Earths to support humanity. Now, these are just 2 simple facts I found online. Now, several thousands, I shouldn't say thousand, but many facts that you can find. And what's interesting is the fact that America right? The Americans constitute a very small portion of the world's population, yet we consume a great majority of the resources. I find it interesting how Dr. Ryder and many of Al Gore and all these climate change activists, even inside the Vatican, I'm surprised that they don't advocate for the total genocide of Americans. Because Americans, statistically speaking, consume more than everybody else. We are consumers. This is a consumerist society. And yet, for just some reason, the social justice warriors, or whatever you want to call them, the climate fanatics, they love saying how we should abort children, but they never follow their logic. Because if you follow their logic that life does not have intrinsic value, right, that kids are not good, that human life isn't good and it doesn't serve a good purpose, then by that logic, if you carry it out to its full potential, these people should be advocating for the genocide, for the total destruction of Americans, just wiping them off the planet. Not just Americans too, just people who consume more than the average amount of the world's population, right? So, all you Americans who drive pickup trucks and who like Hummers or like Jeeps or who like guzzling gas, well, according to that mentality, you Americans or those type of people who live that lifestyle should be killed. Now, that's a nasty lifestyle. It's not a solution. It doesn't solve the issue. What solves the issue is technology, actual investment, right? Efficiency, changing people's lifestyle. It's also interesting because Travis, I should say, says, and I kid you not, he actually says this. He says, having many children is wrong, right? He makes the claim that having lots of kids, is morally wrong. There is something morally wrong with you if you have kids, right? If you have more than 2 kids, you are a terrible human being who hates the planet. That's not true, because it just shows how disconnected Dr. Ryder is and his colleagues are, because if you know anything about big families barely consume, right? Big families, and this is a stereotype, and it's very true, that big families recycle, right? Hand-me-downs are huge in big families, right? Big families don't go out every weekend and buy new sets of clothing or new sets of shoes. You know who does? Millennials. But hey, right? We shouldn't kill millennials, right? And I agree, we shouldn't kill millennials. But again, it's about your lifestyle. It's not about how many people are, or how many people exist, or how many people there are in a certain geographic location, right? It's about the lifestyle. It's about how do you go about living your life. Now, what I find also really messed up about this article is the fact that Dr. Ryder makes the claim, he actually uses this analogy that a person is responsible for example, an analogy he uses to show how having kids is morally wrong is by, I kid you not, this is actually what he says. He says that it's similar to letting a known murderer out from jail and knowing that he's a murderer, and then and by doing so, you are responsible for any future murder that murderer commits. And he equates that to having kids, because kids naturally consume, right? Well, human beings naturally consume, but because kids have an ecological imprint or carbon footprint or whatever you want to call it, because they have because they have an effect on the environment in some way, shape, or form, then that is morally wrong, and you shouldn't have kids. That's his whole entire idea. It's funny though, because he depicts murder as wrong by that analogy, and yet his solution is literally murdering babies. Yeah, I mean, I cannot make this stuff up. This is what these people actually believe in. And it continues on. The whole entire philosophical outlook that this article, or his mentality, is based upon is moral relativism. In fact, he makes that very clear because he makes a certain claim in the article which says that the values of human beings have evolved, right? And that eventually human beings have to evolve out of this idea that doing harm to other people is wrong, right? We have to evolve out of that. So he makes this claim that there is no such thing as objective truth. There is no absolute moral standard, and you know what's interesting? I applaud him for at least being logical in the sense that he's at least, his logic follows his philosophy. Right? His philosophy says that human life has no value. There are some human beings who are worth more than others. Right? There are some innocent people who are worth more than other innocent people. No matter where they are, who they are, no matter what age, right? Some people are just intrinsically worth more than others. Right? That and then even then you have other problems with it, but the whole entire outlook of moral relativism is the foundation of this idea that, well, we should have population control because human life does not have intrinsic moral value. And yet it does. Even the UN, again, not known for for being scientifically objective, even the UN recognizes that human beings have this thing called human rights. And if you break down this notion of human rights, well, human rights begins at conception, right? Because to have human rights, you must be a human. If you are a zygote, if you are a fetus, well, you are still a member of the human species. Therefore, you have human rights. You are part of the human family. And so if you use the modern day liberal political philosophy of human rights and all that stuff, it's interesting how they conflict. You know, this idea that we have to have abortion to save the planet, but there's human rights. You can't have both, right? Either human rights exist, and there is an objective standard in there, and human beings have to be treated in a certain way with respect and a dignity and etc. Or on the off chance that humans don't have values. In fact, killing a human being is as equal as picking a booger out of your nose. That there is no difference, right? Killing an ant and killing a baby are the exact same thing. Exact same action. Again, totally screwed up philosophy, totally satanic, right? Because it doesn't value anything. It's all relative, and that's a huge problem. Total problem. Now, to conclude on this little video, I'd like to point out this. It is a statistical fact that the Western world specifically, but even China and other parts of the world are going to face a massive die-out. And that's because there are more old people than there are babies being born. And yet, you continue to hear this dribble of, we have to save the planet, and there are too many human beings on the planet, when we know that's not true. We have people are dying more than there are being born, right? That's a fact. That is something we know, that we can observe. And yet, you still hear these claims from politicians, and even sadly from people inside the Vatican. For example, just this week, there was a scientist, or I don't even call him a scientist, but there was a speaker who talked at the Vatican who said that we're going to need population control. You know, we need to limit the size of the world's population. That's bad. That is bad, intrinsically evil. That's worse than Hitler. People love comparing things to Hitler. That's worse than Hitler. 10 times worse, 100 times worse, infinitely worse than Hitler. And yet this is what's being celebrated, what's being pushed, right? Because, tell you what, NBC News is read predominantly by Americans, right? It is not read by Brazilians. It is not read by people from Argentina. It's not read from Ukrainians. It's not read from Russians. It's read by Americans, right? And it's interesting how they push this upon the Americans, right? This idea that, kill your babies, contracept, sterilize yourselves, do this, do that, don't have kids. But the solution, if you really care about the environment, you would have kids. Not only would you have kids, but you would live a lifestyle which allows you not only to have kids, but to raise them healthfully, right? The issue is not children. The issue is the modern day sedentary lifestyle. That's the issue. Agrarian societies, agrarian communities are 10 times better for the environment than urban centers. We know this. And yet, there is the people in power don't push the return to becoming agrarian. They don't push that return to going back to being farmers. They don't push that. What they push is the satanic policy of killing children in order to control the population. That, my friends, is problematic. Pray for these people, and pray for me as I pray for you.